Quentin Tarantino is one of my favourite filmmakers and is known for a lot of things. His insanely extensive knowledge of films, his love of old Hollywood and classic filmmaking techniques, his brilliant visual style, his use of music, iconic dialogue, and all these different things coming together to create some nail-biting moments of tension. But what I want to look at today is a thing that happens right after these moments of tension.
Auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi boss.
What is a Tarantino burst exactly? Well, it's the quick explosion of violence that happens right after a long dialogue scene, so none of the fights from Kill Bill count. Today I want to look at 3 different bursts and the different effects that they have on the scene and the film as a whole. Starting off with one of my all-time favourite scenes, the bar scene from Inglourious Basterds. I want to break this scene down into 3 parts, before the Nazi officer comes in, after the Nazi officer comes in, and then when Michael Fassbender asks for 3 glasses. Each of these parts represent 3 completely different tones for me, starting off really casual, allowing Tarantino to establish the character of von Hammersmark and some of the other players in the scene, which include Wilhelm. We get to spend some time with him, which gives his eventual death even more weight. It's relaxed and just kind of flows, similar to many other conversations in Rio Bravo, for example, which is one of Tarantino's favourites. It perfectly establishes the mood and atmosphere of the scene, or at least what we think is the mood and atmosphere of the scene. We then get into the purpose of the meeting, this info that von Hammersmark has, but just as it's about to begin, in comes Wilhelm, who does one of the most tension-filled things in the scene. He puts Fassbender on the spot, making everything harder for him, and just as he's about to get away with it, boom, in walks this gigantic bellend. His presence increases the tension. We all know the thing about Hitchcock with the bomb under the table, so I'm not going to get into it. But basically, this guy is kind of the bomb under the table, until the 3 glasses moment, in which the literal bomb under the table is introduced. After this shot, all the relaxation is out the window, and then the bartender, who's framed right in between, grabbing his rifle, show an external force entering the conflict, adding even more tension. Tarantino knows that both the characters and the audience know that there is only one thing that can happen. The tension has been built up and you could cut it with a knife, but instead of cutting it a knife, Tarantino shoots it in the balls. We all know what happens next. So aside from the fact that it breaks the tension, this burst works very well because it's a quick, sharp, and very painful culmination of every arc set up. And it also takes away some of the most important contributors to Operation Kino, making it even harder to accomplish the mission. But the over-the-top framing and editing of the burst works to satisfy the audience. We know that violence is coming and Tarantino is giving it to us in the most extreme way possible. This is a stark contrast from a film like You Were Never Really Here, which completely takes the audience out of the violence and subverting our expectations in the process. This next part is going to sound slightly weird, but we're expecting the violence, but maybe we didn't expect it on this level, even though we kind of were, but we're kind of in denial of it because the characters we just saw being properly built up are being killed in like 10 seconds. Which brings me to the next scene, Candyland Massacre from Django Unchained. This was the first time I ever saw a film in which the main character, no, 2 big characters, get killed within seconds of each other. Aside from the fact that it's just really fun, this burst works because we just saw 2 big characters, especially King Schultz, who we've spent 2 hours with, get blown away. And this big emotional moment is followed up with a gigantic action scene. It works because it doesn't give us time to process this gigantic piece of storytelling information. I was so shocked that Schultz has died, but Tarantino did not give me the time to process it because he pushed us straight into the next scene. And so throughout this burst, our emotions are just all over the place because now we're fearing for Django's life, and only after the fight is done are we allowed to process the shocking chain of events that was ignited by a simple handshake, or lack thereof. It's this brilliant domino effect that shows the importance of every decision made and how the smallest choice can cause so much. The final burst I want to cover today is one from The Hateful Eight, which is the most subdued one in my opinion out of the 3. One that serves more as an answer to some of the questions asked earlier in the film than as a forwarding of the story. So aside from the great filmmaking and Channing Tatum's appearance, which means that both members of the Jump Street Police Department have now been in Tarantino films, There isn't a ton to talk about, I'm just joking. This is the first of a two-part series leading up to the release of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'll be making another video closer to the film's release, along with reviewing every Tarantino directed film in my old review style, starting in April. No shit, Game of Thrones is coming out, so maybe March. Anyway, thank you for watching, and this is probably the most abrupt ending to a video essay I'll ever do.